Hi, Ms. A. Thank you so much for joining.
You're welcome, Miss Danielle. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
That's wonderful. I'm
Good.
good. I'm good.
Um, can you tell us a bit about how you knew the Gobbles?
Sure. What had happened? It was around the end of 2023, probably the last week of 2023, the first week of 2024. We were looking to rehome some Belgian Malinois. There was two of them that we wanted to rehome, and I had contacted one of my childhood friends in Moxville, and she told me about Greg and gave me his phone number, and I contacted him to see if he wanted to take our dogs because we did not have the space.
Okay.
And so I contacted him, and he had come. It was probably the first week of January, second week of January, and did some basic commands with the dogs. Um, he had come to our house, and um, we told him, there was paperwork with the dogs. Everything was, the dogs were, they had paperwork with them, and um, he came to us and came in our backyard, and we showed him the paperwork. We showed him on the computer where he can get the dog's lineage. He also told us that his wife was in the car, or in the truck. I'm sorry, the truck that was parked. Um, and he spent about an hour and a half at our house,
Uh-huh.
just basic commands with the dogs and talking with us about them and some cancer personal issues that he had had with cancer, because my husband at the time had developed cancer, and so they were talking about that. So that's how we met them.
Okay. And did you ever interact with Cindy?
No, I never saw her. I told him, I said she can come in the house, since he was in the house and we were looking at the computer on the dog's lineage, and he had spent a lot of time there, that she was able to come in, just invite her in. And he said, no, I think she just wants to spend some time in the truck. So she stayed the time in the truck.
Okay. All right. And did you guys see them again after that?
I didn't personally. I did not see him after that. I think it was around the third week of January. My husband at the time was calling him a couple of times that week and asked him, "Are you wanting to take the dogs or not take the dogs? Because we need to have the dogs rehomed quickly." They were not, I mean, Belgian Malinois, I mean, they can't be in a confined space, so they needed somewhere else to go. And because he was a trainer, um, my husband was kind of adamant about, hey, do you want these dogs? And so I think it was around the 27th of January, or maybe the 29th of January, that he came and picked up the dogs. He said, yes, I'll take the dogs.
Okay.
So he did come, but I was at work at that time.
Right. And how did you come to even contact Greg about the dogs?
Well, I had a childhood friend. I'd say a childhood friend because I was a child. She was an adult, but I babysat, and she was my next door neighbor, and she had kids that she had babies that I would go and visit. She was like three doors down. Her name is Terry. She is she has told me that she's fine with being being known. Um, she told me that Greg was a trainer, and that because I had asked her if she wanted the dogs, and she said no, but maybe I have a friend or an acquaintance that might want the dogs, and so she gave me Greg's phone number.
Okay. And did either you or your husband at the time have any other interactions with either Cindy or Greg after that?
Um, After that, around May, I want to say May 24th, between May 24th and May 27th, maybe. Um, my husband called me when we always talked when I got off of work, and he said that Greg had called him because he wanted to sell the dogs to somebody in Atlanta, and there was a discrepancy on a registration number for one of the dogs. And Greg wanted to know whether or not we can contact the original owner to make sure that that number was correct. Because they wanted to make sure that they registered them on the website that we had given them, because the website we had given them had the lineage all the way back to Germany and Austria, and so they wanted to make sure that the registration number was correct, or he wanted to make sure that the registration number was correct, because when they entered it, they couldn't pull up the dog.
Uh,
Um, and so my husband when I contacted my husband after I got off work, he said, Greg called me. He wanted to know if the registration number was correct. And we had a long, 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 long conversation. And it wasn't about just the dogs. It was about the marriage situation.
mm-hmm.
And he told me that, Greg was distraught. And he told me that this is coming from my husband at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Greg was distraught. And I want to say it was between the 23rd to the 26th. It was like 3 or 4 days prior to this incident. It
Uh-huh.
wasn't very long. Um, he said that Greg was distraught. Um, he had nowhere to go, and Cindy had told him he had to leave, but also that he had to leave the month prior, according to the police. But within that 23rd to 26th of May, he had spent the night with Cindy, and that they had relations, and he doesn't understand why Cindy would just make him leave again after what they had just experienced.
Huh. So he was at least relayed to your husband being very caught off guard by this. It was very unexpected.
It was very unexpected, yes.
Uh-huh.
From what my husband had told me, um, he said that Greg was distraught, um, didn't have anywhere to go because Cindy had just kicked him out again. He needed to get these dogs um, sold to somebody in Atlanta so that he can at least have some money. Um, he didn't understand why Cindy was kicking him out again after they just had relations the night prior.
Right.
And they had a long conversation, and he said to my husband, he was begging and pleading, I would never ever hurt my wife. I promise you, whatever the police are saying, I would never ever 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 do this to my wife. I promise you I would never do this to my wife.
Do you know if he ever mentioned what the accusation was?
No, there was no, my husband didn't tell me anything about what the accusation was.
Okay. And did you guys like hear about them either being reported missing or about when they were found on Friday, May 31st? Did you guys hear that news report?
So it was on Saturday. That Saturday, the Saturday after they maybe have been reported missing. I didn't know that they were reported missing on Friday, but on Saturday I went to work because I have a part-time job. Um, and when I was at my part-time job, the clients that I take care of on that job, they like to listen to the news. And it was around 7 o'clock that morning or 8 o'clock. The news broadcast was on, and I saw Greg and Cindy's photos side by side that they were reported missing. And I'm not sure exactly if they were reported missing at that time or if they were reported missing and found. Um, but I was in shock because I didn't recognize her. I recognized him.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so I immediately called my husband and I said to him, I said, "You're not going to believe exactly what I'm about to tell you, but Greg is on the news." And he said, "Greg?" I said, "Yeah, Greg that you just spoke to a few days ago. Um, he's on the news." And I'm not sure exactly if I told him that they were missing or if they had been found in Iredell County. I don't remember exactly what I told him, but he said, "I don't believe it." My husband told me, "I don't believe it.
Right.
I don't believe whatever they're saying." So I think maybe what I had told him is that there was a murder suicide, and he said, "I don't believe it," because my husband told me that because of the conversation that he had with Greg a few days earlier, he didn't believe that Greg could have done that.
Uh-huh.
And I told my husband, I said, "I think you need to call the Davie County law enforcement." And so my husband did.
Uh-huh.
He did call Davie. I don't know exactly what that entailed, but my husband did give a statement.
Okay,
And he
so
and he told me he did give a statement.
Davie County Sheriff's Department, the people there know about,
They should because my husband did call them.
right? Wow. And I guess what did you sense about all of this? I mean, I know that you didn't have much of an interaction with Gregory, but how, I guess, how personal, like, was that interaction?
So it was very personal. When he came to our house in January, um, first of all, he came with a loving heart. You can tell that Greg had a loving heart. He gave us a cross, one of those little metal crosses, which I still have. Um, he and my husband talked about cancer because Greg told us that he had throat cancer and
Mhm.
that he had overcome it, but my husband was also going through prostate cancer. And so they talked a lot about that, and I was there to witness that. Um, and there was a lot of praying. Arms were wrapped around each other, all three of us, while his wife was still in the truck. I mean, she didn't want to come inside. I don't know why.
Mhm.
I don't know why, but she didn't want to come inside. But Greg did, his arms were wrapped around my husband and I. We prayed and prayed and prayed. Um, we read from the Bible. I mean, he was in our house about an hour and a half.
Mhm.
And so there was a lot of interaction I I just don't. He had a very loving heart. I just don't see that. I was very shocked when I read, when I heard the news. Very shocked. But I wasn't the one that interacted with him. It was my husband that interacted with him, which I'm not in contact with right now.
Right.
So
Okay. And so then when you heard the news, what was your first impression?
my first impression was, um, there's got to be a different reason or a different outcome because I can't believe this. I can't believe this.
Right. Is there anything else that you can share about your interactions with the Gobbles?
Um, I don't have any other interactions with them. I do know that the dogs that we did give him are now, I've been told that they've been placed in good homes,
Mhm.
and that's good to know. Um, but I don't really have any other interactions with them. I don't know any other information.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing the interactions with them that you did have.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And anything that I can offer you, if I can remember anything, I will definitely let you know.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're so welcome.